Right. We're going to go ahead and get started, guys. Thank you all for being here. Oh, where's my notes at before I get going? Know what I'm saying. Otherwise, I'm up here like, my mind is blank. What am I doing? What am I doing in my life? Thank you all for being here. I love these nights. I love being able to dig in with amazing friends and artists that I've had the incredible pleasure and honor to have met along my journey. So let's give it up for Rheva, guys, as we get started. Yeah. Rheva, what was that?
I mean, you know, when
Oh,
you
was
get
that the
the
dog?
dog barking too, that's
Come on.
the first kind of applause I've ever gotten like that. So it's pretty special right
Love
there.
it. Heck yeah. We need some dogs for some more hype men. You know what I
was
mean?
great.
Like that was the
It's a dog pound like Arsenio Hall. Like that was legit right there. That was legit.
Arsenio Hall. Oh man. Take that one back. Whew.
I mean,
Jeez. Wow. Okay. Well, welcome to the Artist Spotlight. My name's Adam Acosta, for those of you guys that don't know who I am. I serve here at Studio with the artists and creatives community. I help to lead in that capacity. There's a few different events that we do. This is one of the ones that we hold on a regular basis. And for those of you guys that have not been to the Artist Spotlight before, I wanted to give a little bit of idea behind why we do this, a little vision behind it. And I came across, in my time with the Lord, I came across this phrase that just kind of stuck with me. And the phrase is that creativity is the weapon of the free. And when you really think about the world we live in, you think about dogs, right? They don't have free will the way that we do. And anything that has free will at the human capacity has the capacity to be creative and to create. And so I really believe the two go hand in hand. And more than that, creativity, I feel like, I fully believe, frees our minds to think in ways we never have before. So creativity is incredibly important to our community, to the greater Greenville community, and one of my personal passions, and I feel a mission in my life, to evoke creativity in more people. So that's kind of what this night is about, is being able to bring people like Rheva here and just open up about her creative process, her life story, the things that she's passionate about, so that all of us can really gain from that and walk away with a higher level of thinking in ways that she has. So thank you again for being here. Very honored.
yes. Just waiting for the dog, but it's all good.
Yeah. All right, so jumping right in, we always do, actually let me say this first off, I have to always thank the tech team. We were a little bit short today because Heidi had to be on her way, but she did help in the beginning. So Heidi helps me in a tremendous ways from like admin stuff. Also we have Evan and Dan that did a lot, so we can give them a hand, guys. So for the longest time, I tried doing a lot of this on my own, and it didn't work very well. So the fact that I have some amazing people to help is awesome. So thank you, guys. All right, so fun facts about Rheva. This is the engagement part. Well, there's always going to be engagement. In fact, we'll do a Q&A at the very end. But I wanted to just kind of get you guys a pulse on Rheva's life, and she gave me a little bit of fun facts and little less known facts about who she is. So some questions here, then she'll answer them. So just the first one, this is a multiple choice question. As a 10-year-old, did Rheva A, audition for the music group now known as Destiny's Child, B, perform as a soloist on Oprah, or C, made it to the semifinals in Star Search? A, B, or C? So let me read those again. A was audition for the music group known as Destiny's Child. B, perform as a soloist on Oprah. Or C, made it to the semifinals on Star Search. Okay, who's A? Who thinks A? Raise your hand. Who thinks B? We have 2 and 2, okay, and who thinks C? Wow, majority of people think C. What's the answer?
I mean, Oprah is auntie, but it's A. I know.
So, okay.
Thank y'all for thinking so highly of me and being on Star Search, though. Thank y'all. Goodness gracious. I love it.
when I was coming up with these questions, I had to actually Google in the 90s what talent show was on TV because I was like,
Star Search. Yep.
I couldn't think of it. I was thinking like, it was the America's Got Talent, and that wasn't back then, so that would have gave it away. Okay, so you auditioned for, it was called, what was the name of the group?
Girls Time, and they actually were on Star Search.
Okay.
So that's really funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Girls Time
Yeah.
ended up becoming Destiny's Child.
Yes.
Does everyone know who that is, right? Okay, so Beyonce? That was the group. that was the group Beyonce was in. So
I
pretty
love
big
you.
deal.
I love you. I love you. Yes. She's like, oh yeah, got it.
Listen, Anne is the life of the party.
Yes,
she brings the
yes,
party.
she is.
All right. Second question. This is a true or false question. At the age of 10, Rheva's first paid gig was as an actress in the stage play A Christmas Carol. Was that true or false?
Probably true.
Raise your hand if you think it's true. Raise your hand if you think it's false. What's the answer?
It's true. But I love Anne. Probably true. Like, what does that even mean? Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
So paid at the age of 10. That's crazy. Come on.
It was only $25, but
Hey,
for
listen.
a 10-year-old in 1991, I mean, that was a big deal. And it was at the largest stage play theater in Houston.
Yeah.
So.
See, that's the kind of stuff that in the dance community people put on there. Like they'll say, I danced for Britney Spears, and they were like on a Megatron at a football game dancing to her song, right?
Literally.
So like, a little bit of embellishment, but it works. It works. Got me some gigs doing that. No. All right, third one, and this is kind of an open-ended. What grade was Rheva in when she first performed as a singer? Any thoughts? What grade was she in? First grade? Second grade? Second grade? That needs to be like a straight out of Compton, like straight out the womb.
Straight out the womb. Right there. Right there.
What's the answer?
It was actually preschool.
So almost out the womb, like
Almost out the womb. Almost out the womb. And it was Whitney Houston's The Greatest Love of All. Yes. No. But I had to learn it line by line on my record player from a 45. So we did it every night with my parents to learn it for my graduation.
Jeez, come on. All right, so I've known Rheva. We've known each other for probably 5-ish years now.
I'm bad at math, but sure. Sure.
Rheva and
We'll
I
go with
met.
that.
We met in Reading at our time at Bethel, and we were doing. I think it was a gospel choir night.
Yeah.
At-
Day at school.
Day at BSSM, right? And we were asked to dance, and there was some people we were connected with at the time, and starting to really build some really cool relationships with Morgan Faliolo.
Yes.
My dude, I
Love
miss
him.
him. He had to go back to New Zealand, but any case, he was the one that kind of. I think he was the one that invited us to be a part of it, right? Yeah. And so afterwards, we're like, hey, let's just come back to our house and come hang. And so a bunch of people came, and Rheva was there. And many of you guys know our kids. And if you don't know our kids, they're very people-oriented kids, and they gravitate towards people. But I've never seen my kids gravitate towards someone the way they did to Rheva. Like they were like on her, and like Rheva was just in it with them, and I was like, wow, that is super cool. So that was our first interaction.
We became best friends from day one, just so you know. I don't know how many times I played that game on whatever little tablet that was, but we played that game quite a bit that night, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
So Rheva's an amazing person. My kids, the kid-approved Rheva. Yeah.
Yes.
No. But amazing friend. And actually, I haven't heard a lot of your story. And so I wanted to have you speak a little bit about just how you became Rheva. Music, worship, the Lord, all the things. So, let me just have you share it.
First of all, my name was actually supposed to be Rheva, so there's that. Yes. My mother forgot how to pronounce it. She just remembered how it was spelled. So we came up with Rheva. So I like Rheva better than Rheva, though. So there's that. I've been singing, obviously, almost out the womb, and would do talent shows, would do all these things throughout school. I went to Arts Magnet Elementary School, which is how I was able to do plays and tried to dance. It wasn't my gift, but singing and all these types of things. And so I would do talent shows in high school, and people would be crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? You know, I'm singing some R&B song, and people are in tears. And later on, I'm like, oh, I'm learning about this gift and this skill and this talent that I have. And I'm like, oh, when I sing, it moves people. Let me see how I can use this for some greater good, right? And so I was a PK, you know. I grew up in church, so that stands for pastor's kid for anybody who doesn't know. And I'd been in church, but I wasn't really in church, right? So I didn't fall in love with God until I started finding out about this gift that he had given me.
Wow, interesting.
Very, very interesting. And it was like, oh, this gift that you've given me, then how do I give it back to you? And so that's how I said, that's why I kind of say worship found me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what praise and worship was even at that time. But then I just realized there was this gift that I had been given that I wanted to give back to him somehow, some way. And then that's how I kind of got into worship and just started studying from the dictionary, literally, what does it all mean? Just from the world standpoint, what does it mean? And that's how I kind of came into what I'm doing today.
Wow, that's, oh man, that's so good. This idea of the gift you've been given almost leading you back to identity, you know? You guys are going to laugh at me here. But Lord of the Rings, yes, I'm going to talk about Lord of the Rings here.
Love it.
I think this came from there, but if not, then I imagined it. But cool quote or idea here. And the idea was like, I forget the whole scene. This dude was like coming back to life or whatever. And he was the king, and like he hadn't held his sword in so long. And somebody said, if you pick up your sword, you remember your strength. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like God gives us these gifts and these talents and these abilities, and they're almost like hints and breadcrumbs for us discovering who we are. I know even for myself, as a dancer, I used to say it this way, that the hip hop culture, if you guys don't know, I'm like deeply like entrenched in hip hop. But when I discovered hip hop, the hip hop culture actually laid the foundation for me to find my identity in Christ. Like it allowed me to understand I was a part of something bigger than myself, right?
Yeah.
So started singing. You were a creative, more than just a singer. You were an actor, and you had aspirations to become an actor.
Oh, I wanted to be a star, Adam. You know, so I actually auditioned for the Mickey Mouse Club too.
Oh, come on.
The year that, you know, it came back, so the year with the Justin Timberlakes and the Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. So I remember
Ryan
being
Gosling
in this.
was on there too.
All that whole group. I remember being in this large room full of people. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any of those things. I was literally at a Mickey Mouse Club audition in a church dress because my parents didn't know anything about being stage parents. So I literally had on the matching dress with the matching socks and the matching hair bow in my head. And they came by, and you had to sing and you had to dance, and I didn't know what dance to do, so I just did the Running Man. So, yes, I wanted to be a star. It was just one of those things. It was like Whitney Houston was my idol, if you will, and I wanted to be her friend and wanted her to mentor me because I just thought that was absolutely possible because I really, really honestly did. For some reason, as a kid, I didn't live a lot of life with a lot of limitations. And so anything was possible to me as a kid. Like Patti LaBelle making food for me at her house, absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. So I thought I was gonna be a star. I wanted to be a star, and I wanted to do acting. I wanted to maybe try to figure out how to dance a little bit.
I got you.
Thank you, appreciate it. But I wanted to do it all. I wanted to sing, act, do it all.
Wow. That reminds me, I don't even think I completely forgot about this memory until you started saying that. When I was probably 9 years old, my daughter's age, my aunt and uncle, they used to take care of me quite a bit because my parents, they were going through a divorce and this whole thing. But I don't even think my parents know this, but my aunt took me one time to an audition for, I don't even know what the commercial was for. She was like, we're going to take you to an audition. I lived in LA, so I was like, okay, I'm like a little 9-year-old, and I don't know, I don't even remember the audition, but for whatever reason, I remember this one thing. She said to this agent, she's like, yeah, he's like my spiritual guide. And I'm like, what are you talking about, lady? I'm like 9 years old. So that audition world is interesting.
It's something.
So tell me a little bit more, and we'll move on from this, but worship finding you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I remember I was in college, and I was failing in college. I literally had a 1.0 GPA, right? Like, I know y'all are like,
feel it.
Did you go to class? And the answer is no, okay? So I did not go to class. I was a music business major at that point, and I went into major in music because I liked music, but I didn't realize how hard music was. And so I went to class and realized I don't know theory, I don't know all these things, I can't sing proper classical music. And so I was, at that point, feeling very defeated. So I didn't go to class because I was just like, what's the point? And I remember it was finals week, and I was walking the campus at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I just started singing His Eyes on the Sparrow. It was a very, very random moment at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I sensed something as I was singing this song to myself. I had no language for it. I just had the goosebumps. And I was just like, what was that? I didn't know what it was. And I started going to this college kind of group thing. And they're like, hey, you sing. Why don't you come be a part of this group? And like, we're going to do worship. I was like, okay, sure. I sing in church. I've done it my whole life. That's fine. So I remember singing this song, and I remember singing at that church, and I got those bumps again. And I was like, what is that? Yeah. And I'm just like, why am I shaking right now? What is happening? And I was listening to a guy who was speaking that day, and he said, you know, a lot of times there's this type of, I don't know to find another word for it, but he said it's anointing, right? Yeah. And so he says usually when God gives someone and he anoints their gift, then it's usually for some type of assignment. Like there's something attached to that thing. Come on. And I was like, oh, so it all began to make sense to me in that moment, why all those people were crying when I was singing anything and anytime. I'm like, oh, there's something that you actually want me to do with this. So good. And so then I was a mess after that point, and I was just like, okay, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And that's how worship found me. Wow. Sure.
So good. In some of my own like journey mentoring artists and that sort of thing, as all of us know as artists in here, artists can be very self-absorbed at times, and especially ones that become very gifted. And one of the things that I begin to help them to understand is this idea that your call, you can never separate your call from the people it was meant to serve. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes, and I'm trying to think of the right way that the words I used to put it to them, but like our dream, our calling hasn't reached full maturity until we've discovered the way that it impacts the people around us. Mm-hmm. Right? And so like if it's just connected to like, oh, I've got this desire, like that's not quite it just yet. Maybe it's a desire or a destiny, but it isn't a call until we can discover how it actually impacts people around us. So I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Oh no, just it was a friend of mine, or not a friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine. Always said that if what you do in life is not about people, and it's not for people, then you have to begin to question yourself. What am I really doing it for? Yeah, come on. And it's like, that's not for me to become the star or, have all the money, although that would be really lovely, Jesus, to have all that money in my bank account. It's not just for all of those accolades or anything of that nature if you're disconnected from the people that you are meant to actually impact somehow. So, yeah.
So good. Oh man, I have so many thoughts. I don't want to derail it too much. You got me thinking about some things. I was having a conversation with Gabe Many of you guys know Gabe. He's he leads worship sometimes with us. But he's a good friend of my wife and I, and he's over at our house often until midnight because he's just a young adult, and that's kind of what we do. But we're having this conversation, and it was about evangelism, and he's got this heart to be in culture, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about that today. But we got into this place of just kind of going back and forth, and something came out that I was like, oh, this is the Lord talking. But the idea was that our goal isn't to necessarily get people to believe what we believe, but our goal is to know the heart of the Lord so much that our heart mirrors his. Like our heart mirrors his heart for humanity. I want to be able to look at the broken and say, oh, I see hope in there. I see something powerful inside of you. I want you to know the Lord, but more than that, I want you to know how much he loves you. I want you to feel that through the way that I interact with you. I think that kind of goes along with that. I want to say one last thing on this worship thing, because it's one of the things that I've heard you say that I've taken with me in a lot of different avenues. But it was one of the moments on Sunday where it just got just so good, and just God's presence and all the words we can use to describe what that is. But afterwards in debrief, we were talking, and I don't remember how we got in the conversation, but you were like, sometimes in those moments, it's best to just keep going and look around the corner just to see what's there, and making the space to just to see what's around that corner. Because sometimes when you do that, that's when it happens. Yeah. Can you maybe say a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just in the process of staying curious, and not feeling as if, because you've experienced a thing so many times and you've been in an environment where sometimes it can become very calculated, if you're like, oh, I can do this, we can build here and this here, and then we'll let it simmer here, and, we can have the formula, if you will, of how to create these moments and feel like we become experts at doing that. And you have to get to, I tell every worship leader or any musician that is doing that within a church setting, you never become an expert.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you'll never become a professional at doing that. Even if you get paid to do it, you're not a professional. So you have to stay at the point of always being a student and always being curious, because if he is so divine and he is so masterful at every single thing that he does, and we don't fully know everything about him, we have to stay curious even in our pursuit, whether it's creatively, musically, or whatever.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and I want to transition to some things here, but on that note, I want to say this, this idea of leading worship, or this idea of following and looking around the corner, this isn't isolated to a Sunday service. No. This is something we should take into our own lives in the industries or whatever that we're a part of. And people are experiencing something. Anytime that we export anything, they're experiencing something through us. That kind of leading people can be utilized in those types of situations as well. So I kind of want to transition into some of that. And this idea is really what I want to frame the rest of tonight about. And the idea is bridging the gap between humanity and the eternal. And I use that language very specifically because we can use bridging the gap between humanity and the kingdom of God, or the whatever. But the reality is, I feel like at times our experiences with God become very finite and acute based off of how we make this structure around it, right? Evan, if you can cue that song up, I wanted to have a little bit of something here I wanted to show you, and then we'll talk through this a bit. Listen to the song for a second. This is the Teskey Brothers. You can probably cut it. Okay, let me ask you this. When you're listening to this song, and I want to hear from you guys, when you're listening to this song, what do you feel? Emotion. Give me a little more. Like, what is it that you actually feel? Like, what is it? Like, tell me what it's doing inside of you. Melts the heart. Very good. If you were to put a more of a descriptive around it, how does it make you feel? Do we need to play it again? Does it make you feel happy, sad, low, in pain? Okay. So here's my point in saying this, and we all have, if we can't put it into words, we all have a specific feeling that we felt when we listened to that song. It elicits an idea, it elicits an experience. Here's what's interesting. When I say worship music, we immediately think of a specific feel and genre that elicits an emotion inside of us. But oftentimes, we limit it to that one thing. We limit our experience to that one thing, and there's so much more of God that we can understand if we get beyond this idea of worship as it is. There was, and I'm going to have you, because I want to have you talk into this, but Shayna, my wife, she's a youth pastor here, and she was having a youth leaders meeting at our house, and she asked me to say some things at the end. And what I said was, I was like, they're going to get something from you guys. And they were like, well, we hope to get something, this kind of a joke. And I said, no, but honestly, what I hope they get, I said, my prayer is that what they get is more than just how to build another church. There's so much more to experience of God than just this one finite thing. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that, and then maybe go into a little bit of what worship is, how you would describe worship.
Yeah, I think kind of tying those two questions together, of always looking around the corner and always staying curious about finding the eternal, as we use your word, finding him in everything, and everywhere. And it's not just confined to the worship genre that's on the Spotify playlist, I remember one day I was just sitting in my home years ago, and I was listening to a John Legend song.
Yep.
And he was talking about this time I want it all in a romantic relationship way. And I'm listening to this song, and I just broke. Mm-hmm. I broke in that moment, and I'm like, Lord, you can have it all. Like, it became a complete song of surrender for me in that moment. Yeah. And people will be like, John Legend? I'm like, absolutely, John Legend.
Come
on. Because if you are constantly looking for him and you're constantly trying to be aware of where this presence, eternal, whatever word you want to use, where it is, then you will be able to find him in any place beyond a Sunday.
Yeah, that's so good.
And then that's even found in a job or found in whatever it is else that you do. I was just sharing with someone a couple days ago. They're just like, I miss having that time and that, and I need to invest more. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, this season right now, you're a mom, mm-hmm. and you're a wife, and you're a mom of two littles. Yeah. Who's to say that you can't be curious to find him as you're doing the dishes?
Yep, come on.
And to find him as you are doing bedtime, bath time, whatever those things are, because you helped to create, those little lives. And in this season, in this moment, you get an opportunity to be able to find him in new ways and find him in ways that are maybe not as normal as you would have in the past. Because, she's pastor, worship leader, songwriter, she may be looking for him in a certain box, but he's actually giving you an invitation to find him in different ways, and to actually see different sides of him that you've ever experienced before.
Come on.
So it is a part of that, staying curious and staying open to whatever it is, even if it's a billboard. Like, I remember coming out of a service one day, and I don't know, creation just looked real beautiful one day after that service. And I remember going to lunch, and I saw this bird walking, on the ground. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
God God is so amazing. Look how he created. Like, I've never seen a bird with these different color blues in the feathers. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. And it was very stunning to me.
Yep.
But my eyes had been open to see him in a place that I hadn't really necessarily expected him. But he was even right there in that little bird.
So good.
You know, so.
Ugh, man. Man, I feel like we could stay there all night. I remember it was on a Sunday, and I was walking around just trying to feel. We dance in church. If you guys haven't been, I was trying to feel where the Lord is at, and I remember seeing this dad and mom. I don't forget who they were. It doesn't matter, but the kids were a little bit kind of rambunctious, and they're like pulling on the dad, and he's like, he's trying to get into this, and I'm like. In that moment, I'm like, I feel like the Lord's trying to bring him into a place where he can experience the Lord with his kids, but he's trying to do this instead. So let me ask, like, how can we begin to break out of that mentality of experiencing this one way or our expectation of what that should be? What can we do practically to get us to a place to experience them more broadly?
Man, I mean, I'm going to bring a little Bible into this because
Come on.
it makes sense.
Bring the Bible.
But the Message translation of Romans 12:1 paints this picture the best for me. And it's like, take your ordinary life. I'm going to completely butcher it. I'm going to paraphrase it right here. It's like, take your everyday ordinary life, your walking, eating, sleeping, going to work, ordinary life, and place that before the Lord as an offering. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at taking it out of that context, I only can worship this way. Yeah. It's like, oh no, actually it's my every part of my life. It's my eating, it's my walking around, it's my going to work, it's how I do relationships, it's how I do my job. It's like every single thing that I do is actually an offering to God. So if I change my brain to my mind to actually think like, oh, every part of my life is actually offering to him, then in a moment like that, I actually see that me actually engaging with my kids is actually offering and not just me singing the song and closing my eyes and having the worship face, you know, in those particular moments. Yeah. So it is literally a reshaping of our brain, of our thought patterns about what worship actually looks like, to actually realize that every single part of our lives is actually worship to the Lord.
Yeah, and I think too, what's tough is we build our experiences with God around this one particular thing, this one particular sound of music, right? And then what happens is we don't know how to recognize God outside of that one context. Yeah. We're so used to having that be the thing that we see God in that anything else that God could try to come up, we don't recognize it. We don't see that for the fact that he's right there in front of us, right? And so I think for me, one of the practicals, I feel like this, beauty is the evidence of God's presence at hand. It's the remnants of his presence at work. So whenever, like if you would imagine like God's presence coming over this phone or something, right? And then it's like in this cloud, and all of a sudden the cloud leaves and there's something beautiful that's left behind. That's how you can tell that God has been there, because there's something beautiful that's left behind when his presence is always there, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? So I think that's one of the ways that we can begin to recognize like where he is, who he is, and in a practical sense, like trying to experience him, trying to find the beauty in the things around us, you know?
Even ask him. Like, ask him to show me where you are. Show me different ways, or show me how you're in this, or show me at any point of the time of day. Like, just remind me or show me that you're actually there in those things too, because if we can't recognize him, it's going to be very difficult to actually see him in those things, if we're not familiar with him showing up in those particular ways. So like, show me, and you'll be surprised. Like, just one little question: can you show me? All of a sudden, oh, I see you on the billboard. Or the license plate of somebody's car. You know, like seriously, like I'm like, ooh, okay, I didn't expect that right now at the stoplight. But it happens. Yeah, it definitely happens. So just asking him to show you in those different ways that you probably wouldn't expect him to show up, or to see him rather.
So good. Ooh, love it. Okay. let's get into a little bit more, and this is going to kind of segue from this idea of creating worship, but so we can think of it in that vein, but also from music and just in general, talking about creating an atmosphere. I think that's obviously something you do incredibly well on Sundays, and we'll talk a little bit about how that interacts with worship and all that stuff, but yeah, let's talk about your experience with the Creative Conference that you attended. Tell me like that story, and let's dig into that some.
Yeah, so I went to a conference. It was a creative arts type conference, and they were specifically trying to figure out and trying to help people bridge the arts within church context and make them a part of the overall services and how do we do all that together. And so I remember they always were telling us, like, you want to pay attention to the senses, you know, so not just what people can hear, but what can people see, and if there needs to be some type of touch element, you know, a scent, or all of those types of things. How do we bring those into an environment to create some type of atmosphere for people to be transformed by this amazing God, right? And so I'm listening to this conference all 3 days that I was there, and the very last day, it's like they showed us how to do it without really telling us they were showing us. And so they were singing some song about creation I never heard before, but, you know, I'm like, okay, cool. And they were doing something with the lighting, and I was like, okay, but, you know, I'm just in this moment. And then all of a sudden, at like the kind of really deep part of this song, this is where I'm only can talk about it from my experience. So this is where I was. I'm like, you know, and just like, whew, yes, okay, I don't even know, but Lord, you are creator. Like, I know that much. And all of a sudden, I just feel all of this light slowly come on into the room. And what I thought were actually walls were actually panels, window panels that were on little remote control, and they began to rise, and there was a like mini little Falls River kind of display behind this church right as they sing, "How great is our God," and I'm like bawling my eyes. I'm just, because they began to use visual aspects, they began to use lighting and texture in the room to get everybody to this point of, oh wow, we're all in awe and wonder. Yeah. And it was absolutely amazing to me. And I'm like, okay, now how do we do that every week? Okay, now what do we do? Like, seriously, you know, how do you create moments that allow people to see different parts of, you know, God, to where they can be transformed in some way and actually make themselves curious to find him in other different ways as well. Yeah. So that was huge for me, and I'm like, okay, we got to be able to create atmospheres. We got to be able to create moments for people to be able to encounter it that way.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about senses and being able, or placing importance on the senses that we all have. And this is my opinion, so just roll with me on this. It's all good. If I'm wrong, it's all good. No. But the reality is that God is always present. We are not. And there are these things that keep us from realizing that he's always there. So for me, in a lot of ways, and I'm probably going to get your stones ready for this one. For me, in a lot of ways, leading worship or creating experiences is really a psychological game more than is a spiritual game. What I mean by that is I'm trying to get people, if I'm leading worship, if I'm creating an atmosphere, I'm trying to get people into a place where they're dropping their guard enough that they can recognize that God is already in the room. Does that make sense? And so for me, when I hear these conversations, I don't want lighting in worship, I don't want this, I'm like, no, I want to use that for you to feel a certain way, for you to drop that guard, to realize God is there. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so for me, it's not the purity of it is like, how can I understand the human experience in such a way that I can get a person to realize that he's always been there the whole time, right? So takeaways from that experience, if you were to walk away and say, these are the things that I found most important, what would you say those were for you?
I would say the importance of one trying to gather everybody at the same point, because I think you realize people walk into a space with all different worlds and different arguments, different things, and so what you're able to do in an environment or a setting is try to get everybody to that same place. And so just like you're talking about the lighting, like it may seem like, oh my God, we're doing lights and all these things, but actually that one little flicker of lights actually help to get everybody on the same page.
Let me pause for a second.
Yeah.
I want you guys to take this in as in, not as in you're leading worship on a Sunday, but in your everyday life when you're around people. How can you take these principles and apply it there?
Yeah.
Good.
So how do you gather everybody that has come from all different walks of life and different moments of life to get them to a point to all be on the same page, to begin to let that guard down? You know, another thing I took away from that was that it's actually okay to be creative.
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
It's actually okay to be who you were created to be, in all honesty, because if you look in those moments, it's like you had the audio people, you had the lighting people, you had the musicians, you had all of these people that actually just got a chance to be who they were created to be in that moment. And that is how everybody got a chance to experience this transcending moment in that particular moment. And another takeaway for me would be the visual part is what really got me. To realize that everybody doesn't receive the same way.
That's good.
And from my context, because of what I do, music is a big part of it. And music does move, and it does, bring about emotions, just like we listened to that song earlier. But it's the same way. Everyone's not the same type of learner. Everyone's not the same type of receiver of things. So to be able to give another element, a visual element, to where it can marry what's happening in the room through sound and be able to have a visual element, I learned that was my big takeaway of like, oh, we can all do this together, and it makes an even greater impact.
That's so good. Man. Okay, not stewarding our craft. Let's talk about that a bit. What we talked about on the phone, your experience wanting to be normal. Let's just dig into that a little bit.
Oh, guys, all right. As much as I said when I was a younger kid, I lived without limitations, and I felt like I could do anything, I could be anything. As I continued to grow older, life starts to get in. It's that poem, what is it called? Experience, innocence versus experience. I don't know. Anyway, had to learn it in college. One of those classes I did go to eventually. And I realized something was different about me. I realized I was not normal, and I was super smart. What'd you say?
I said no.
Yes. I was smart, I was in the accelerated academic classes. I know the person that got a 1.0 GPA in college was in the accelerated academic classes. I literally scored past high school level on my standardized testing in 2nd grade. Wow. I wasn't normal, but I started to realize I wasn't normal because of the people in my neighborhood and how they would interact with me, and they would call me names, if you will, because I didn't go to the school that they went to, and I talked different from them. And so all those things began to plague, as a child and teenager, all those things. And I was like, I just want to be normal. I just really want to be normal. And so instead of going to the arts high school, where I would just do music all day long, I wanted a normal high school life, I wanted to be a cheerleader, I wanted to date athletes, and I wanted to be homecoming queen. And I did all those things in high school, right?
Come on.
And because I wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be normal. And then fast forward to 2023. Yeah, real recent, y'all. 2023. I began to realize my desire to be normal had actually shortchanged me.
Wow.
From fully accepting who I was actually created to be.
Come on.
And all this sparked from a picture of me and Beyonce at a slumber party that came up this year. And I was looking at this picture. I'm like, here's Beyonce in this picture. Here's Rheva in this picture. We're both 10 years old in this picture. And one person is one of the most influential stars of the world today, and the other person, she loves Jesus. That is great, and it is wonderful, not shortchanging that. But what all could she have fully been? And not saying that life is over, because it's not. But up until this point, what could I have done up until this point had I actually realized who I was?
Come on.
And stewarding the gift comes into play with that, because I took voice lessons here and there. I sang, I did things, so it's not like I didn't do anything. But looking at how much I would have had to give to the craft if I would have did the art school.
Yeah.
If I would have went to Berkeley in Boston. I didn't want to go there because it was cold. And, all these types of things. If I would have actually invested the time into my craft all those years, how much different would I be now? Not to say that I wouldn't be a worship pastor now, but how much more skill would I have at this season in my life? So because I wanted to be normal and wanted to I didn't want to embrace who I actually was, I put a lot of that on the back burner.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, not wanting to be normal, beginning to fully embrace who you were created to be, what are some things that you feel like would be helpful, maybe from your own journey, for all of us to be able to glean from to help do that? Because I think all of us in some ways feel like that, right? Like, there is Jacob Collier. He's a musician. He does some really incredible things. He has some like Instagram posts that are really cool. But one of the things that he said that kind of stuck with me, he was on stage and he was just talking, and he said, for the longest time I was afraid to fully be myself, because he said I felt like if I was going to be myself fully, it would take up space that someone else couldn't take. They said, but then I realized the more that I'm fully myself and the more space I take, the more space it creates for other people to take. So the more you're actually yourself, the more you're giving other people the freedom and the liberty to be fully themselves too. So there's importance there. So what are some things that we can do to maybe step into that?
One, realize who you are. Like, understand that everybody has been gifted with something, with some skill, some talent, some whatever that is, and recognize what that thing is, Next, I would say, go to therapy. I know it sounds I'm like...
Love it.
Like,
get help.
Very, very seriously.
Go and get help.
Get some help, because sometimes, like, there are things we may have agreed with, or we may have, beliefs that we may have heard from someone. Like, there was something in my life that told me that I didn't need to stand out and I needed to kind of dim down, So there may be something that needs to be unpacked, is what I'm saying. In order, and you can have Jesus and therapy, okay? it's a double and, it's not one or the other, okay? Unpack what those things may be. And then I would say, just pull the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, let's do it.
And just go for it. Just go for it. Because a lot of reasons why we don't are because of, as Brene Brown calls, the people that are not in the arena. The people that are on the outside, that we're afraid of what they are going to say and how they're going to judge this and judge that. Only deal with the people that are actually in the arena. And if you're the only one in the arena, then you go rip that Band-Aid off and do what you need to do in order to really actually fully be all that you were created to be.
Yeah.
All that you were created to be. Me, what does that look like for Rheva? Well, Rheva, that means you need to continue taking voice lessons. I know y'all are like, what? No, but seriously, because I want to get even better than I am, you know? And I want to write. You know, so you need to start writing songs, you know, and you need to start recording them, Rheva, and not just having them sit on your phone for 10,000 years. So that's me ripping my Band-Aid off, and then also looking in the mirror and actually asking the one who created you what are the things that he sees in you, and actually start speaking those things over yourself.
Come on.
And using those declarations to speak those things over yourself, because you have to get rid of all the negative stuff in your head, and you have to fill it with the positive things.
Yeah.
So once you go to therapy and get all of that out, actually start to refill with those things that he says about you and how he created you to be.
So good.
And then rip that Band-Aid off and go do what you need to do. Sorry.
So good. Ooh. Love it. I love what you're saying about lessons. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. Excellence. Let's talk about that. I believe that excellence is important for even as a believer. There's a lot of, I want to hear your take on that. Why do you feel like excellence is important?
I personally feel that excellence is important because you always want to give your creator your best.
Let's go.
Because it's like this. If you've been given a pair of shoes by your parent, let's talk about your parent. Your parent is giving you this pair of shoes, this nice pair of shoes. The next time they see you and those shoes are dingy and scuffed up and the lace is frayed, what does that communicate to the parent about how you feel, what you feel about that gift that they've given you? And so for me, I'm like, you've given me this gift. At the very least that I can do is make sure this gift is not just what you've given me, but actually better than what you've given me, because that just shows you how appreciative I am of the gift that you've given me, and it also honors you and really thanks you for giving me this gift. So I believe we have to be excellent in everything that we do, because it reflects himself back to him, number one. And number two, it shows our appreciation for what he's actually given us.
So good. Talking about shoes. So Eric gave me a pair of these On Clouds. He gave a few of us a pair of these On Clouds as kind of a gift. Eric's more like a big brother, not like a dad, you know what I'm saying? But still the same thing. I wore these shoes, and Eric and Candace both were like, oh, I'm so glad you like those shoes, you know? So I don't know, a little caveat there, but okay. So one last little topic here we're going to go over, and then we'll have a Q&A. So this would be your time to queue up some questions if you have any. But I want to talk about some singing, some actual practical singing tips. If you guys didn't know, I'm going to put a little plug here. Rheva gives voice lessons. So if you're learning to sing, or if you catch this on YouTube at some point and you want to take voice lessons. Oh, we needed a slide or something to be able to put it up.
It's real easy. hello@rheva.com.
hello@rheva.com. I'll try to remember to get that up somewhere. But if you want voice lessons, and if you haven't heard her sing, of course, amazing vocalist, incredible. I can go on and on about that. Okay, so singing tips, practicals. How can we make our voice better?
Yeah. First of all, you have to realize that your voice, your body is actually your instrument. So, like musicians, they have trombones, drums, whatever, they put them in cases and things of that nature. Well, this is your instrument. So you have to take care of it first. So that's what we put in it. That's what we're eating. That is how we're taking care of it in cold weather, wrapping it up, all those types of things. You want to make sure that you're taking care of your instrument, drinking all the water, really practical, because a lot of people think that when you drink water right before you get ready to sing, that actually does something. It doesn't. So, because it takes, your body needs to be actually hydrated, you know, in order for those vocal cords to actually vibrate at the correct frequency, so, and not be strained and all of that great jazz. So you have to drink drink enough water and eat pretty healthily as well. So that's just real basic singing, number one. Number two, I would say you want to work on your breathing, okay? So it's there's a singing group, these two sisters. They did this little singing challenge where they sang this entire phrase of a song or whatever in 1 minute without taking a breath. Like, that is amazing breath support. Yeah. But you want to make sure that you do breathing exercises, because how we walk around every day, we do not use our diaphragm to breathe every single day, okay? You go to the doctor and they tell you to take a deep breath and everybody goes, raising their shoulders, okay? So that is not actually a real diaphragmatic breath, all right? So you have to begin to work on doing deep breathing exercises that actually expand your diaphragm, because it is an involuntary muscle. You have to make it work, okay? It doesn't work on its own. So you want to do breathing exercises, because that will help you get the amount of air to your vocal cords that will help you not strain when you're trying to hit notes and sing and all that great jazz. And then actually sing. I know it sounds really foreign, right? But you actually have to use it, because it is like a muscle. And if you don't use it, it's kind of that little phrase, you don't use it, you'll lose it. So you actually have to sing. I recommend singing around the house at least 30 minutes a day. And that'll help begin to strengthen the muscles, especially if you haven't utilized them in a while. Those are 3 basic tips.
Little known fact, I can't stand musicals. Do not love musicals at all.
I love them.
At all. However, my first professional gig was in a musical where I had to sing, so I had to learn how to sing. So, not like a soloist.
Are you gonna demonstrate for us right now?
I am not.
Okay, you sing, I dance. That'll be our trade-off. Okay, it'll be our trade-off.
Every now and then I have a little bit of a weird, I'm gonna be a singer. Like, no, you're not. You ain't gonna. No, you're not. But I love music, but no, okay, awesome. Guys, can we get it up for Rheva, please? That was amazing. Yeah. Man, such good information, good knowledge. I'm going to definitely listen to that one back again. So Q&A, let's take a few minutes. Do we have anyone that wants to ask some questions? This would be the perfect time to drill Rheva on the hard questions. Go ahead, Ann.
When you were little and your parents, and you were starting to sing or whatever, like, how old were you, and like, how did they recognize maybe you? How did they encourage you? How did all that process happen?
So I'm going to say it so how did your parents encourage you as a singer and to grow and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was 4. And so I would sing around the house. I would just imitate everything I heard. And so they began to hear me sing things around the house. And my teacher heard me at school. And so she's the one who recommended that I sing the Whitney Houston song, Greatest Love of All, for my preschool graduation. And so from that moment on, I went to pre-K, and my pre-K teacher also found out I could sing. And she actually recommended for me to go to school across town to the Arts Magnet Elementary School. And so from that moment on, my dad, he's not quite like, I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Jackson's story. He wasn't quite Joe Jackson, but definitely like, okay, because he had like a little entertainment bug in him. So he would try to get me in anything and everything. And when my school was putting me in commercials and things of that nature, it was fascinating to him. So whatever they could afford to get me in, they would get me in, those types of things.
So good. All right. Anyone else? Questions? Anyone else have any thoughts? Yeah, go for it.
When you create, or when you're getting to a place like where you're writing a song or whatever, do you have any, say rituals, but are there things that you do that get you into that space faster?
So any kind of rituals or like habits that help you get into a creative space when you create?
there's like some methods for songwriting specifically that I usually am kind of thinking through. It depends on which setting, I would say. One setting is like, okay, what are some things that are happening in life right now? And then I'll brainstorm around whatever those themes are and those things and see what pops up. So literally like the brainstorm of like what's in the middle and what branches off from those things to see if I land anywhere. Another thing, sometimes melodies just come. Sometimes they come in my sleep, literally, and I am humming it in my sleep, and I can't go back to sleep, and I have to wake up and get a phone, and it sounds horrible in my voice notes. It's like, you know, but sometimes it just comes naturally. One time I've had like the entire melody of an entire song that just came very, very quickly, and I just had to go and write it down right then in that moment and craft it out and give it to somebody so they can make it make sense. So it always varies. It always varies, but I usually try to figure out what is going on in Rheva's world for that brainstorming piece so that I can make sure it's as authentic to Rheva as possible and not just writing something out of the air. I want it to actually be real and not just creating just for the sake of creating. I want to create something that's actually authentic to me. So. I don't know if that really helps to answer your question.
Talking about like dreaming and creating in your dreams. My wife hates this, but I twitch a lot when I sleep. And popping's a dance style, and it's very like the kind of like jerky stuff. And so when I train in popping, and I'm dreaming about that, it's even worse in my sleep. So it's like, as a like young, or later teen into my 20s, I was dancing a lot more, so I would do that all the time. But thankfully, I don't do it as much. But anyway, so 2 or 3 more questions.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
What is your process in preparation for worship
Ooh.
as we gather here on Sundays? And yeah, how are you thinking about obviously worship being a dynamic thing? And then what are you paying attention to and considering even as you're in it, leading us?
So what is your process in preparation for worship, and what are you like honing into or like listening into in the process of the service itself?
Yeah, a lot. It is like you're multitasking a lot in the moment, but for the process beforehand, usually I'm a feeler. So I'm all the way down to what songs we're selecting. Like, okay, I'm like, what am I feeling that the people may need this particular Sunday? If it's a particular message, particular theme, all of those things. For the song-wise, leading into rehearsal and Sunday morning, it's usually, all right, we've done all that we can do. We've practiced, we've got the songs down, the team is ready. And my team knows, like, we are really okay with throwing the entire set list out the window if we have to. And if we don't make it to all the songs, so be it, because we want the creator to encounter his creation. So all the way up, and my team also knows things can happen within 2 minutes before the set starts. Literally, as Eric and Candace are opening worship, we're standing there and something will drop and I flip. If you ever watch me sometimes, I will flip around and turn towards the team. Okay, A, B, C, D, do that. And they're like, okay, just follow me, just go with me. And that usually is kind of what happens pre-gaming for that. In the moment, you're also still paying attention to, one, what's around that corner. And being curious. I know it was a couple of, I don't know, they all blend in together at one point. We had sang a song that I felt like needed a response. And we finished the song, but I'm like, they need to respond somehow to this song. And we were gonna go to the next one, and I was like, nope, let them do what they need to do right now. And so you're always just trying to, like, worship leaders are not the leader, number one. Holy Spirit is always the leader. And so we don't do anything unless we're following him. At least that's what I'm trying to get everybody to get to that point. Follow him, you're not that smart. So, and I always say, I'm not that smart at all, and you just have to be open to what he wants to do. And I'm also, like I said, a feeler again. And I'm just like, okay, I think we can put a bow on that. I think we're done. Or like, I don't think we're done. And I look at Eric and I'm like, okay, well, we'll just keep going. So that's kind of the pre and then the during.
That's good. Maybe two more.
You can ask anything too, guys.
Any other questions?
Do I? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you play an instrument?
I fluently, no, I don't. I had to take piano in college, so I know my way around keys. So I can at least, for my voice lessons, like I can take my students through vocal warm-ups because I can do that on the keys. I can read chord charts, but could I play on a Sunday? We would be very sad about that. Mm-hmm.
So what is your process around songwriting without sound, if you will?
Yeah. You have melodies in your head. Yeah. You can hear sound. And so that usually is what happens for me. I'll have the melody in my head, and I'll hum that melody into the voice recorder. Or I may have a melody that actually may be a piano melody, and I'll go and I will play that piano melody on the keyboard, record that, and then write something to that. So either I may start with all melody in my head of just what this melody is that I can hear, this random melody from heaven, right? Or I may go and bang it out on a piano and just record it as is. Or I have just also written lyrics and then put it to someone else's melodies. Yeah. So there's many ways that you can do it. But I would say don't allow you not being able to play an instrument limit you from thinking that you can't songwrite because of that.
That's good.
You listen to music, you listen to all types of sounds all day long. Those sounds live inside of you. And you can easily do that as well without it.
That's good. Do you have a question? If you had no boundaries and you had to take anyone with you, what would worship look like to you?
Swinging from the chandeliers. I'm just kidding.
I'm with you.
Just
I'm
kidding.
with you. Give me a rope swing. You see me swinging. Whoosh.
Just like that. Oh, man. So my dream is I have a favorite band named Snarky Puppy.
Let's go.
And they are all instrumental band. And so they're like jazz, funk, a little bit of gospel here and there, experimental. It's all kinds of things. And they're just absolutely creative. A lot of the things that they do is improvisation. But it's amazing what they do. So I love their creativity. And then I love like a United Pursuits creative lyric writing because they don't use like churchy language, but they also are creative even in their writing and expression. So I would have something that fused those together and had some type of visual element at the same time, even if it wasn't like, even if it was on a screen, like, or if it was something that actually gave some type of interpretation to these sounds that was also taking place. And yeah, and then just left people like, I have no idea what just happened to me. I don't like if having that kind of takeaway when people walked away, that it's like, I don't know what just happened, but I felt like I just was in heaven.
So good. Go ahead. Yeah.
Have you had a mentor over the years, or I would love to hear any of your journey with like character development, how that's been?
So, have you had a mentor in your journey on character development?
Girl, life developed me.
The hood
Not by
developed me.
my own desire, but it did. Like,
It was the
seriously.
hood.
I had 5 years where I lived in the desert, literally and figuratively, in Phoenix, Arizona. And there was a lot of character development and all those things that I got, unfortunately, by, the school from the hard knocks of, one, a lot of pain, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of grace that I had to learn on my own. I've looked for a mentor for years, and I always say I am very beyond thankful for Holy Spirit, because He is a great teacher, a great counselor, a great comfort, and that's what literally I had to. If you should go back through, if you're on my Instagram, go back and read my 40 lessons I learned in my 30s before I turned 40, and that'll give you a very good picture of what my 30s had to teach me, and that helped me get to this point today. I would look at people from afar, so I would call them my mentors from afar, and I'm like, I'm gonna get something from that person, I'm gonna glean something from that person, I'm gonna read this thousands, I have so many books. And that's the way that I had to teach myself, and I had to learn. But yeah, so it was a lot of life. I'm very huge on character development because I've seen people try to lead and do things without it. And it hurts a lot of people in the process. And so because of that, and because of the things I've experienced, the Lord, he developed me a lot. He developed me a lot. I don't recommend my way for everybody, because I would rather you all not go through that. But that was how He developed me, for sure.
So good. So finishing, I want to go back real quick and just a little plug here for myself. Shayna's question about if you weren't, if worship was your own and you weren't worried about it and whatever, and you went to this whole experimental thing. We actually have these things here called Flow Night, and they are every other month, and we're still trying to solidify the date for December, which will be our next one. But that is, and it's hard for me to call it worship. I'll quickly say this. The reason for that, for me, I have a tremendous value for worship, but purity in worship, meaning when I'm worshiping the Lord, I'm not expecting anything in return. When my mindset goes, I want something, it leaves worship and it goes into something else. Not bad, but it is something else. That something else is actually Flow Night. And what I mean by that is I'm looking to gain something from the eternal to walk away and give to the world. Flow Night kind of is that experimental in the eternal realm space, where it starts very collaborative and just kind of fun or whatever, but then we go into this, I don't want to use the word intercessory, but like prayer, moving our creative energy towards the Spirit in a way that impacts the world. So if you're looking for a space like that to just kind of feel what that's like, to experiment in that type of vein, come to Flow Night. You will love it. The last one was amazing. So anyways, thank you. Appreciate you, man. Man, give it up one more time for the Rheva. Rheva.
Yes.
Man, thank you so much again for being here. Just an honor to be a friend and to do this journey with you through studio and I'm sure through the rest of our life. So thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.